So you want to retire in income? There are plenty of products you can pick and choose until you find this overwhelming. Well, we're going to make it simple now and we're going to show you how you can package different income products to live the retirement of your dreams. Fellow investors, bonjour. This is Mike Leroux, founder of Dividend Stocks Rocks and passionate investor. You're listening to the Dividend Guy blog podcast where I and my co-host Véronique will help you invest with more conviction so you can enjoy your retirement. Dividend Growth investors, bonjour. Mike Leroux here. You are listening to the Dividend Guy podcast. It's a tough one. I don't know. We recorded 2 episodes today and it's not going that well so far. So I don't know where this episode's going to lead us, Vero, but I mean, I'm going to try to do my best. This is the day, right?
It happens about like once every 6 months, I would say now. Back in the days when we started, we were not that good, to be honest, but we're getting better, just not today. So we'll see.
Not today.
That's a good time. Yeah, that's a good timing to say hi to Zlat, the person who edits all of our videos and podcasts. So hi, Zlat. Thank you for your hard work.
Yeah, and if you ever hear us speak French during the podcast, it's one of the cut that she missed. So.
All right, so today we are breaking down some of the most popular income generating products and more importantly, how to package them together. Should you package them together? And all of this without overcomplicating your retirement portfolio. Because the truth is, mixing multiple products doesn't always mean better results. Sometimes it just means more confusion.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Retirees are craving for income products, which totally makes sense. And the industry is craving to make money. So they just want to make sure that they get served. But the same way that you can buy a dozen of chocolate bars when you have a sugar craving, it may not necessarily be the best thing for you. Today, we're doing a different approach. Instead of like talking about different income products, doing the pros and cons, we're going to explain a few of them. And then we're going to go into how you can build your portfolio, creating a mix that will make sense. And we're trying to keep things simple here and not overcomplicating stuff.
Mm-hmm. So there could have been like thousands of products that we would have picked to discuss today, but we will go through probably the most common income investments retirees use, which are laddered bonds, ETFs, or GIC ladders, all-in-one ETFs, dividend-focused ETFs, and of course, we are the Dividend Guy blog podcast, so dividend stocks. These all aim to generate income at one point in life, but the way to do it varies a lot. So let's start with how each actually generate income, Mike.
It's kind of funny because that's already a lot of options. I decided to add a few more throughout the show, so
Right.
keep listening. And even the funniest part is it's only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we could have made a series of shows on how to create different types of portfolio. So we're going to, again, try to cut down through the noise and keep it simple.
All right. So for laddered bond ETFs or GIC ladders, how does the income flow work here?
So we use the word ladder because we want to illustrate that there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years maturity. Every year you have something that matures. A lot of investors are not necessarily comfortable into investing in specific bonds, like doing the research. They're not sure if they should go for government bonds, municipal bonds, go for corporate junk bonds. So then you could pick the easy solution. You go for a laddered bond ETF. It's more liquid, so you could sell it at any time, but still you're going to receive a yield out of it. You spread the maturity, which is good because it also means that you spread the interest rate risks. So for a GIC ladder, you have like every year, like one part of your ladder will mature. So giving you access to liquid cash plus the interest. And usually the good way of doing it, like the strategy, is to reinvest the capital back into another 5 years. So you always keep the ladder going and you just use the interest as your source of income. The downside, of course, is you cannot deviate from the original plan. So if, for example, you have $100,000 divided in 5 years, GIC of like 20K each, but on year two you need 30 grand, well, that's not going to happen. Because I like as a banker, I like to say that the only way that you can break a GIC is to die. So I don't recommend it. So you're kind of stuck with that 20K every year. You cannot move that around. And in terms of
Hmm.
income, of course, it's going to be hard to generate more than 3%. Maybe 4% if you're lucky, depending on the timing on interest rates and the economy. You're going to get like those promotions like, oh, 4.5 or 5% for the first 6 months. But yeah, okay, cool. It's 6 months. You're in retirement for the next 20 years. So not necessarily like keep on planning 3, 4%, and even 4% is generous. I would probably stuck with 3% in my planning.
Okay, now all in one ETFs, they basically hold a mix of assets, but how exactly is income produced?
So it's not necessarily the first thing retirees or income seekers have in mind to invest in all in one ETFs because it's mostly used in the accumulation phase. So you're thinking all in
Hmm.
one ETF, you're thinking, of course, XCQT and chill, the good old saying. So, meaning that you invest in all in one ETF that invests in Canadian market, US market, emerging, Asia, Europe, and it all rebalances automatically. So you don't have to do anything. One thing that you can do though is to go for a mix that as an income part, so preferred shares and bonds, and then you will have a higher yield of distribution from those ETFs. Again, they're professionally managed, they rebalance automatically. That's a very easy way to get into retirement. If you don't want to manage your portfolio or you're thinking of your spouse that is not comfortable reading financial statements, doing this, I mean, you invest according to your risk tolerance, and then you will probably generate a mix of income from the yield and selling some units, which is also totally fine. Again, we have explained that several times. You have the cash reserve, and then boom, you're going to be golden for this. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to mix this into with other products, but the goal is
Hmm.
really to have something that is on a cruise control and will not crash and burn because it's too invested in a specific type of stocks or assets. It's well diversified, so it can help you walk you through retirement without any worries.
And what about dividend focused ETFs? Like, is it different?
The difference is, of course, the distribution yield will be higher. Do not make the mistake of thinking that a dividend focused ETF will provide you with a stable and increasing distribution, even though it may focus on dividend growers. The dividend can fluctuate depending on what happens because there is an active management of the fund behind it. So depending on if they buy or sell stocks, the market and so on, the distribution can vary a little bit more, but the yield will be higher. You will find all kind of dividend focused ETFs here. So you're going to have those that are closer to a DSR portfolio with this philosophy of focusing on low yield or being agnostic to yield, but focus on quality companies with a high dividend growth policy. And some others can focus on high yield stocks. So you're going to find those like high yield Vanguard ETF, for example, that will go for something generating like 5, 6% yield. And again, in terms of income, you're going to get a mix of dividend and capital gains. But in this case, maybe you can figure out a way to just live on the distribution.
And of course, dividend stocks are income products in the sense that they also pay a dividend. But what are the pros and cons of them?
So if you want to build your own portfolio, the pros are you get total control. You know exactly what you own and why you own it. You can make specific choices according to your values, to your strategies. You can modify everything whenever you want. And this is usually the reason why I don't like ETFs is when I look at the top 10, 25 holdings, I always find companies I would not invest in. So I have a problem putting my money into something that I don't believe in. So that's why I want to have total control of my portfolio. On the other side, though, dividend growth investing, picking stocks is not for everyone. It requires more time. You must be able to manage your portfolio, not fall in love with stocks or not fall into dividend traps, for example. So it will require a little bit more time, a little bit more knowledge. And this is actually why we have created Dividend Stocks Rock 12 years ago, is to support investors and make that part easy. But even then, if you have no interest, I mean, it's not going to work for you. One thing I have to highlight though is regardless of your strategy around dividend investing, dividends aren't magical. So it's literally
Mhm.
just the transfer of money between the corporate bank account into your bank account. So there's no value creation here. There's nothing safer. We have discussed that last week where the yield or the distribution is not safer than total return. If the company is not doing
Mhm.
well, the dividend can be cut and the investment will pay the price. Same thing if you go for just a growth stock. If it's not doing well, the stock price will decrease. It's exactly the same thing. So you just have to ponder the risk between you want to have full control or no control, and you want something a little bit more geared towards higher expected returns and focused on equities, or you go with bonds and GICs, and then you're totally safe.
And Mike, let's throw like another one here related to dividend stocks. What about preferred shares? Like I heard they pay higher yield. I know some members at CSR use them. So how does that work?
Yeah, we have a pretty long list of preferred shares that we follow for our members, which makes it quite interesting. Well,
Mhm.
by definition, a preferred share, they will pay a higher yield than the original one. So if you buy preferred shares of Royal Bank or Enbridge, you're going to get a bonus on the yield. And you pay that bonus through not having the participation into the growth of the stock. If you see that Royal Bank has doubled in value over the past 5 years, let's say, for example, your preferred shares will go up, but not double in value. So it's just because you want a higher yield, the price will move a little bit more like bonds. So they will follow
Mhm.
the interest rates instead of following the company's performance. What is great though is if you are about to invest in Royal Bank, well, you monitor Royal Bank anyway. So if you want to boost up your yield a little bit more, you could buy some preferred shares of the same company because this is what you need
Mhm.
to do to know if the dividend is safe or not. It will still be related to how the business is going. However, the business must cut the regular dividend before touching the preferred shares. So you will get a buffer, a kind of like a cushion or an alert to maybe double, do a deep dive into that company if they cut their dividends. So you don't get stuck with the preferred shares. One other thing that is important to consider for preferred shares as well is there are different types of shares. You have like companies with like rate reset, for example. So they will change their rate at a given time, announce like before that. Some of them are cashable, so they can buy them back at a specific time or whenever they want. So you need to dig a little bit further to understand exactly what you're buying and what are the implications. Again, requires a little bit more time, a little bit more knowledge, and it's
Mhm.
also less liquid than regular stocks. So
Right.
I remember while I was doing weekly webinars during the COVID crash in March of 2020, a lot of members were asking, they were just like, okay, I get that the stock price are dropping, but why my preferred shares are falling just as much? And the reason was not because the people were selling, is nobody wanted to buy. So there were absolutely
Mhm.
no market for preferred shares. So ironically, the real value of many shares and some bonds would have probably been very close to zero in a sense where you just cannot sell them. So you might as well hold on to them. So just have to keep that in mind that in major crashes or panic, they will be less liquid. Of course, it's just for a moment there, but just to keep that in mind, you may want to go for ETFs that will include a bunch of preferred shares. So, same pros and cons, dividend stocks versus dividend ETF. You lose control, but it's professionally managed. So, if you don't want to get into all the details of a preferred shares, but you still want to enjoy a higher yield, this is a way that you can do that makes a lot of sense.
All right. So I feel like we may have enough products on the table. But now it's like a pile of Legos. Like, what are we doing with them? How do we assemble them?
Well, there are many ways to do it, right? Actually, we can cover up to like 20 in our income guide. So you can download it at retirementloop.ca/income. So we have like today we're going to cover like 6, 7, but we have like actually 20 that we covered with pros, cons, how to use them. So it's going to be even more interesting for you, more Legos to play with. So we'll see how it goes. But today we're going to focus on those just to make sure that we understand how to create something that can have a solid foundation for your retirement.
All right. So could you like create different types of portfolio for us and maybe Let's start with a high income one.
Yeah, for sure. So high income means also less flexibility and weaker returns, total returns. So you have to consider this. If I would build a portfolio for a high income, I would probably go for a combination with like either ETF bond ladder or GIC ladder. That's pretty much the same thing. So that would be a portion of that. Then preferred shares, because as I said, it's great because they offer a higher yield, still a good protection against the market, and then a high yield ETF. So then you would probably be able to build something that is not too complicated, generate between 4 to 5% yield easily, that is stable, relatively simple because you have like 3 4 products. I mean, you can go even simpler by doing an ETF of preferred shares instead of like selecting shares. That would work too.
Hmm.
On the cons though, preferred shares bonds won't generate much. I mean, yes, you get a high like interest rates and then a higher yield, but in terms of total returns, you must know that you leave money on the table. That's non-negotiable, that's for sure. The high yield ETF, if you go really for something that pays 5 to 6%, could also underperform because you're sacrificing like quality businesses for a higher yield. There's a reason why a company pays a yield above 5%. And the reason is quite simple. In most of the time, like probably 90% of the time, the company is a mature business that is not growing or not growing that much. So because it's relatively stable, you can feel good about it. So that's the good yielders. But there are a lot of companies that eventually start to struggle because if you don't grow in the business world, at one point you're going to have some more problems and then you're going to see your revenue decline, earnings decline, and then you see what's coming up next, underperformance.
Mm.
So that's why you always have to keep in mind no free lunch in finance. So if you buy a stock or preferred shares or any products that are offering an amazing yield, there's a reason for that. And if you don't understand the reason, then you get into trouble. So keep that simple. But this type of portfolio could definitely work, generate 4 or 5% yield without any problem, and has good chance to see the yield increasing with the high yield ETFs as well.
Okay, but Mike, for many investors, a 4 or 5% yield is not a high yield. So what if I want more income?
I don't know if we've been blessed or we've become difficult as investors, but 4 or 5% is nothing anymore. The financial industry actually learned that quickly and decided to come with a bunch of other solutions offering you super high yield. You can find them into mutual funds, closed-end funds, seg funds, and a lot of like other high yield solutions with high MER. So not only the financial industry is really happy to provide you with a yield of 8%, but they're also very happy to charge you for that, which
Mm.
totally makes sense. But the flavor of the month are definitely covered call ETFs and leverage covered call ETF. So like we have to make the difference between both. The classic covered call ETF, they exist for at least a dozen of years. So I remember I was super excited to invest money into ZWB back then. It was it exists still today. Covered call ETF from BMO, focusing on writing covered calls on Canadian banks. So the 6 Canadian banks thought it was it was a no-brainer. I mean, you hold very high quality banks, they pay a dividend, which is great. And on top of that, you're getting an extra premium because the firm is writing covered calls. So I
Mhm.
decided to start a position in that, thinking, yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to like make the difference between banks and the covered calls and see how it goes. Quickly realized that I was leaving money on the table. Like that's the thing. So yes, you have a higher yield, but I could have just sold shares from the banks that I own and I would have just done exactly the same thing and better actually. I could have generated a higher return and a higher withdrawal, so a higher distribution doing this. So I was like, not incredible, but again, those covered calls ETF that are built on this way, they make sense. I mean, one that is like quite popular is GEPI, the JP Morgan Income ETF. That offers about 7% yield, simplifies the process, you get a higher income. And if you look at how it worked over inception, I mean, it's not that bad. I mean, they're writing covered calls on the S&P 500. So if your goal is to live off that 7%, I mean, as long as the S&P 500 generate a total return above 7%, which happens since
Mhm.
the creation of GEPI, and historically the S&P 500 has outperform the 7% expected return. So that totally makes sense. You can generate that income, retire happy, all good. I just have to mention though, I did a video on my YouTube channel a while ago. So if you look for GEPI, covered call ETF, the dividend guy, you're going to find it. But what I did is the exercise of like every month, I would invest in SPY, so tracking the S&P 500, or GEPI, and then just sell enough SPY unit to match the GEPI distribution. So on the
Mm-hmm.
first day that I could trade on the month, so not trying to do market timing, not hesitating on anything, just simply, on the first day of the month I can trade, I'm just going to sell some shares to match the distribution. End of the story. And I did that since inception. And big shocker, I would have a larger portfolio and had generated the exact same income with SPY in the portfolio instead of GPI. And that was working the entire time. So if you, again, you leave money on the table, but it's a lot easier if you do nothing and you pay someone to do it for you. So I totally get that. So that's the solution you can do. Now you have another, I would call this the new generation of covered calls. They are leveraged covered call ETFs. So what they do is that they use a portion of leverage. So they do not leverage the entire portfolio, thank God. So it's less risky. But of course, in the bull market, when you use leverage, you amplifies the movement. So if the movement goes up, well, you have a higher amplitude. So that's great. You're making more money. You have
Mm-hmm.
to keep in mind that if you use leverage when the market goes down, well, it also amplifies. It goes both ways, right? So right now it looks like super great. You have Hamilton and Arvest ETFs that are making a long list of those leverage covered calls. HDIV is one of the oldest, I say, started at the end of 2021. So I have a few years. I mean, it's not much, but I mean, it gives the impression it can keeps up for a long time. It did not cut their distribution in 2022, which is actually a good thing. It offers a 10% yield. Again, good thing. The distribution has been increasing from time to time, more in the bull phase of those years. Of course, in 22 it got stable, but again, no dividend cut is a good thing when you're looking at it, especially at 10% distribution. The real test will be when that 20% of the ETF that is invested in US tech stocks with some leverage will go through potentially an AI bust. I don't know. I mean, maybe AI is
Mm-hmm.
going to continue to drive the market for a while. I hope so. That would be great. But at one point, maybe it's going to be too much. So what's going to happen with this ETF when the AI related stocks starts to go down? We'll have to wait and see. I mean, this is a risk I just want to highlight. But so far, the 10% has been paid, so that's great. We also did a complete show on Arvest HHIS not too long
Right.
ago. So we explained because of the great selection of trendy and strong stocks, mostly related to, again, technology or Bitcoins, the portfolio is up by more than 20%. So they are able to distribute that 25% yield. Now, is it going to be able to generate total return of 25% for the next 10, 20, 30 years of your retirement? That's another story. I mean, mathematically speaking, they won't. But I mean, records are made to be broken, right? So I'll wait and see if the 25% is something that is achievable. But I would not bet my retirement on it. Just put it this way.
Hey, dividend growth investors, this is Vero. Mike is currently taking a sip of water, which gives us 10 seconds, and I literally mean 10 seconds to grow the podcast together. Go on Spotify or Apple Podcast, hit pause, and then under our logo, you'll see two very interesting buttons. One to subscribe, hit that subscribe button now, and then give us a 5-star rating. Our goal is to help more investors just like you, so please spread the love. Thank you.
All right. So since you're not that positive about all of these covered call ETF and leverage covered call ETFs, is there any better solution to create income?
I would not go as better, but one that could probably generate a higher expected returns over time. And if you have a higher expected return, you also have a higher retirement budget because it goes hand in hands, right? So I would make stocks with the cash reserve. And you can do it the both ways. You can do it with an all-in-one ETF, and so you don't have to take care of anything in terms of investment. And then you just have a cash reserve to bridge the gap, as we have explained a few times on the show. So that would be a simple combination of products, one all-in-one ETF that invests in like 8,000 stocks, and then a bond ladder or a high interest rate savings account, ETF. So 2 lines in your portfolio, end of story. Full control, everything goes smoothly, and the expected returns should be better. On my side, I will just keep the same strategy as I've been investing since 2010. So it's been 15 years now, and I don't see why I would stop dividend growth investing. I would just add the same cash reserve to bridge the gap between my investment yield, which will likely be around 2% at the time of retirement, and whatever amount that I need to withdraw from my portfolio. Again, if you go above 5% of withdrawal rate, you're increasing the risk of not surviving your portfolio. That's again just mathematics, it's nothing else. Regardless of how you invest, pretty much the same all over again. Now, if you look at the stock history, technically you should be able to average like 9-10% if you're 100% in stocks. So if you couple down with a cash reserve, probably you'll be able to have a very, very good years and sustainably withdraw 5% of your portfolio without even seeing the end of it. So that could be a good thing. But again, we have no clue what's going to come up in the next 20 years on the stock market. So might as be a little bit more conservative on that side than a little bit more cowboy.
But Mike, you just shared like a really simple and effective way to generate income. Unfortunately, it is also where things often get messy because people want to package more products and the temptation to mix more is high because they fear missing out if they don't. So one thing we frequently see is retirees holding an all-in-one ETF and then adding dividend focused ETFs, thinking that they get a mix of growth and income by doing so. Is this a good idea?
Well, the thing is, you're going to create a lot more duplicates than anything else. The overlap between ETFs, it's even more true on the Canadian side. So if you just invest in the Canadian market and then you invest in a dividend focused ETF based on the Canadian market, you're going to find the same kind of companies: Canadian Natural
Mhm.
Resources, Canadian Natural Railways, the banks, some pipelines, some telcos, some utilities. I mean, they're all the same. So
Right.
it's not that it's bad, but you're just creating more overlap between both. So you're thinking that you diversify. And I get it's hard to comprehend that you have one line in your statement and one line is enough. You have one product in your entire portfolio. You invest like $1 million in XQT. And then you're thinking, wow, I'm not diversified. Well, XQT has between 8 to 9,000 stocks at any time of the year. So if having
Mhm.
like 9,000 stocks is not diversified enough, of course, you can add whatever you want to that mix, but what you really do is just adding more salts to your soup.
Mhm. And then there's also the combo of individual dividend stocks plus ETFs. What should investors watch out for?
So for this one, I kind of like it a little bit more because you could build a core portfolio with ETFs. Mostly thinking, I want something that is professionally managed, well diversified, and I don't want to touch too much. So that could be a good avenue to invest in ETF in this case. Or you want to, let's say, manage a portfolio of stocks on the Canadian side, but you want to have exposure to the US side, but you don't want to add more
Mhm.
companies to your portfolio. And then you can have like an ETF tracking the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ. So you
Right.
have that exposure without spending more time on your portfolio, and you keep investing in what you know, like Canadian companies. So when you do this way, it's relatively simple. It's a great way to get exposure and mix two strategies that will work well. The important thing, once again, though, is to make sure that you do not have duplicates in terms of like overlap in terms of stocks, and to manually build your sector allocation in an Excel spreadsheet. Because the thing is, with ETFs, you're going to have like multiple sectors, sometimes multiple assets on top of that. And since they change all the time, it's kind of hard to mix this with an existing portfolio of stocks and have that on a platform. I mean, for example, at DSR, we
Mm.
are not able to do that. So we identified ETF, we identified the stocks, but I cannot tell you if you're overweight into the industrial sectors by that mix. You'll have to calculate this yourself and do a spot check maybe twice a year or once a year just to make sure you're not overweight into something. So it's a little bit more work in terms of adjusting everything. But I like the idea of having a part that is fully passive with the index investing. And then the other part where maybe you're just getting older and you want to have just a portion of your portfolio because you just love to manage stocks. So for your
Mhm.
$1 million, you could have like $900,000 into ETF, which is kind of like changing strategy. And you keep 100K that you manage yourself because you just enjoy it. And I might as well, even if you make mistakes, it's not going to be the end of the world because the rest of your portfolio is protected from yourself, which could also work. So as you can see, there's a few mixes where ETFs as a core, adding stocks on the side could definitely coexist and make a great portfolio.
Mhm. Just don't think that it's simpler. It's just different, but it's not necessarily more simple, right?
No, it's definitely not
Um,
more simple.
and what about mixing covered calls, ETFs, and broader ETFs?
Yeah, I hear a lot of investors saying, "Oh, I'm a mixed investor." Like, because I don't know where this obsession come from of like labeling. I don't label myself as a growth investor or a dividend investor or an income investor. I mean, if you want to go to the extent, I'm a dividend growth investor, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
those are just labels. But they want to get a little bit of everything. So higher income with covered call ETFs, participating in total return with the broad ETFs kind of makes sense on paper. And actually on paper it's even it looks better because you cover all angles, right? It's like having like defensive players and offensive players in a hockey team. But I remember a few years ago, about 2 years ago, Martin Louis, Ab's coach, who's doing a great job, but he had
Mm-hmm.
this complex defensive strategy in his zone. So it was a mix of a zone defense and a man to man and then switching around between both. Well, long story short, it was a disaster. We were giving up goals and shots like there's no tomorrow because at one point or another, the players were not figuring out if they were trying to play a man to man or a zone defense or if it was a mix of both. And then when you think you cover all angles, you cover none. So you have the saying of if you're trying to be at two places at the same time, it's the best way to not be anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So having this kind of mix, you risk overlap stocks, overlap of sectors. And I mean, mentally speaking, you can think that you're getting a mix of both, but probably that a good part of strategy A is going against strategy B. So you're not getting better. You're just putting a bunch of different kind of ingredient into your soup, but it's not the more spices, the better either. So having 7 different type of salts is not a good idea. I mean, putting curry, spicy sauce, and then vinegar, and then sugar, and then salt, and then pepper, and then oregano and thyme and rosemary. I mean, that sounds a little bit more like when you're 4 years old and you're just putting everything that you
Right.
see in a ball. Yeah, you don't want to taste that. You don't want to give that to
Look,
your kid
mommy,
anyway.
I made you a nice soup.
That's a bit too much, in my opinion.
Right. So, in the end, Mike, is there any real value in mixing multiple income strategies or products, or does it just add complexity?
Well, it certainly add complexity, but there are ways. As I mentioned, if you have like a core ETF with some stocks, or if you go for income and you have like a covered call ETF and a mix of bonds of preferred shares, there's a way to keep it simple.
Mhm.
I would say don't go with like 5 different type of strategies all together. Then you're just adding complexity for nothing. I think it's great to have something that is straightforward and easy to explain. Like we have like some investors that they have like built spreadsheets that they could go to the moon with to manage their portfolio. I mean, that's great. They understand it, obviously, but what about your spouse? What about if something happens to you? Will they be able to manage that crazy Excel spreadsheet, or would they be forced to sell everything because they have no clue what you're doing? And is it because you just fell in love and buying, selling, analyzing, and then switching from one strategy to another because it's kind of like a hobby? And I get that. It's quite addictive, actually. Or is it because you have a clear strategy and you know what's your asset allocation percentage, what's your sector allocation, and how you want to direct like your buy and sell decisions? Because if you're just making a big mix of everything, I mean, it could work. And actually, right now, everything works. As we mentioned in the last episodes, my dogs and my 10-year-old would be able to generate double-digit returns right now. It's not always the case. So just want to make sure that it's a little bit more simple. You can use like kind of like that bucket strategy where you have a bucket of bonds, a bucket of preferred shares, and a bucket of like growth. Okay, that could make sense, but still, I would just stick to something a lot more straightforward. In my opinion, the two easiest way to build your portfolio at retirement is either you have a portfolio of stocks because this is something that you want and you have a cash reserve, or you have an all-in-one ETF and a cash reserve, and that's it. So you don't have to worry about too much. If you just want to focus on income because you feel better this way, classic covered call ETF makes a lot more sense than the leverage one, because the leverage are focusing on a lot of hype right now. And I mean, the market is up like 20%. So of course it's working, but I would be a little bit more cautious about those type of strategies that has not passed the test of time. And there's nothing you can
Mhm.
say to convince me it's going to. I've heard had so many times. Yeah, it's going to be fine, and then you realize, oh, it's not. So the test of
Right.
time, you have to go through it. There's nothing else. I mean, we can argue until tomorrow morning. You have teenagers at home. I have teenagers at home. They don't know what we know at the age of 40. Like they don't. They have to go through that. They don't know how it is to have kids. I mean, they could argue, but they have not passed that test. And trust me, they're
Right.
going to
Right.
pay back. It's going to be payback time.
And then investors can act like stubborn teenagers and do it all the same, but they're gonna live
The
with
consequences.
the end result. Okay, Mike, we can't end this episode without mentioning that the doors to the Retirement Loop community are now open. If Canadian listeners would like to join, there's a 21-day challenge that is about to start in the community, and I'm really excited about this. So, could you summarize what the community and this challenge are all about?
Yeah, so Retirement Loop Community opened their doors last week on November 13th. It's going to close on November the 23rd or the 24th. Anyway, so you have like about 10 days to decide if it's the right thing for you. It's a place for Canadians that are either about to retire or they just retired. So it's like 5 years before retirement into 5 years into retirement. This is the best place for you to use Retirement Loop because we're going to help you build your plan, answer all your questions, manage like how to manage your portfolio, establish the right sequence of withdrawals. Like, where do I get my money to retire? I have plenty of accounts.
Hmm.
I want to do tax optimization. So you have all of this that is included in Retirement Loop. We have a spreadsheet helping you to do that. We have retirement coaches to do that as well. And what I decided to do that is going to start on November 24th at the day that the promotion ends, actually not just the promotion, but actually the doors are going to close after that, is for
Hmm.
21 days, I want to help to build the retirement plan with you. Or if you're already a member, which is going to be fun. So it's going to be build or rebuild your retirement plan right before Christmas. So at Retirement Loop, we say you should retire each year, making sure that you revise your retirement plan. Stuff changes, your budget changes, the market affects your portfolio. There are so many different factors that you cannot just do a plan, project everything for 35 years, and think that in 35 years
Hmm.
you're going to be on the dot. That is impossible. I'm having a hard
Right.
time to plan what I'm going to eat in a month from now. Don't tell me what's going to happen in 30 years from now, right? So the 21-day challenge is 3 weeks separated into the first week. We're going to work on the mindset. So how to shift from the accumulation phase to the decumulation phase, how to envision retiring with zero, with leaving money to your heirs. So we're really focusing on envisioning the retirement. So what's your next year is going to be. The second week, it's time to plan. So it's all about planning, establishing your net worth, establishing your investment accounts, playing around with different scenarios with the retirement loop spreadsheet, maximizing for your budget, maximizing for taxes, like plenty of stuff that you can play with. We have like optimizer that are built in, which is great. So you can select really the portfolio and the solutions you want to retire.
Mm.
And finally, the last week is all about taking action, doing your power of attorney and will. A second look at your retirement spreadsheet with a retirement coach, building and preparing your portfolio for withdrawal. So the principle of the cash reserve, we have even an Excel module integrated in that where it will calculate it for you, but you still have to build your portfolio accordingly after that. So it's all about taking those actions, and your plan, your actions, your mindset, everything will be completed by December 15th. So right before Christmas, so you can enjoy the holidays, don't think too much about it, and start January fully comfortable with a clear plan and with a great community as well if you have any question, because you can log in into Retirement Loop at all time. We have
Mhm.
webinars there. We have the Loopers show, having people participating about a bunch of different topics, which is amazing. You can ask questions. We have more than 500 members to help you out. They're in the same situation as you. So that's great. And some
Right.
people are a bit older, some people are a bit younger. So you will find someone that ran into that problem and has the solution for you, has the answer. So that's even better than trying to figure it out on the internet, because the best answer at that point will be it depends.
So, listeners, as you can see, it's a lot more than a projection tool and retirement plan on paper. It's constant support, either from us or from other members as well. So, you may want to hit retirementloop.ca now to join this community and start planning your retirement, or visit the link retirementloop.ca and download the income products guide. There's a button right there on the homepage, so you can do both. Well, that was such an interesting discussion about income products and packaging at retirement, Mike. Thanks so much. Listeners, I hope that you have enjoyed it as much as I did. If you feel lost or unsure about your retirement planning, make sure to check out retirementloop.ca to get the tools, but also to get access to people like you to help you out. For our show notes and related content, visit thedividendguideblog.com/254. If you like what we do not leave without hitting pause and the subscribing now. Until next week, stay invested.
Stay invested. Hey fellow investors, it's Mike here. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Please note that the Dividend Guy Blog podcast is at no time issuing buy or sell recommendation. Please do your own due diligence, as this podcast is recorded for information and hopefully fun purposes only. Make your research, make sure you do your stuff. We're not responsible for your losses or your profit after listening to this episode. And until next one, stay invested.